Hi, I'm Trey, one of the firmware deployment engineers. I typically help out with remote installations and occasionally do a few site visits. It's time for the LuxOS demo everyone has been waiting for. First, let's talk about getting LuxOS onto your machine. You're going to download Commander. It's our installation and configuration tool. It'll look like this when you first download it. What you'll want to do is put in your network, which generally consists of either a range, single IP, or a site or subnet for the miners that you want to install. So you hit configure networks. You'll see I already have a number here. Mine's already selected, but if you needed to select one, you would just select a network that you have added in. I'm going to deselect that because I already have my other network selected. And then you'll hit scan networks. It'll go out and it'll try to get every IP address in either the range or the CIDR or the single IP that you put in. It'll try to reach those miners and come back and give you some basic information on them. If the miner is available for install, you'll be able to select the miner, and the new button will show up here and it'll say install miner or install LuxOS. So you'll hit that, install LuxOS, and once complete, you'll end up at a screen that looks like this. This will be what your miner looks like after LuxOS install. Now obviously mine's been up for a day or so, so yours will be ramping when you see it the first time, but you'll end up at a screen that looks very similar to this. On the dashboard, you pretty much get all of your basic information: hash rate, power consumption, estimated efficiency, uptime. You do get a little graph here that shows you some temperatures and your hash rate over time, your fan output, and various metrics here for different ways to look at your hash rate averages. So 24 hours, 15 minutes, and 1 minute. Some pool information, and your tuner status. Note that this is not a button. This doesn't do anything. It is just there to let you know if the tuner is on or off. And then your pool status. Up at the top here, we have this little drop-down menu in the corner. And here's where you can turn auto tuner on or off. You can also do things like blink your LEDs, put the miner to sleep, reboot the miner, or restart the mining process. Down below that, you have your 3 hash boards. Each one of these shows you your voltage, your frequency, hash rates, chip health. We have 3 statuses for chip health. Healthy means that all chips are reading and acting appropriately. Unknown typically means that the miner is in transit. So it is going from one profile to another, or it's adjusting voltage, or it's doing a health check. Something about the chips are in transition from one state to another. And then unhealthy. Unhealthy means that we can read the chip, but it is not hashing at a rate that we would expect, or it's not accepting the new frequency. But you can end up with chips in the unhealthy state while the miner is still hashing. And then your 4 temperatures, 4 for each hash board. Note that these probably do look cooler or lower than what you're used to seeing on Bitmain, but Bitmain gives you an estimated temperature at the chip level. We give you, from this view, a actual board level board level temperature, because we don't want to estimate the chip temperature. We would just rather give you the data that we can actually verify. So down here you get the exhaust top and bottom, and intake top and bottom. Same for each other hash board. And then you get your basic pool information down here. We do have the ability to restart and shut down hash boards here. So if, depending on your configuration, you'll be able to restart the hash board or shut it down completely. Typically, you'll use that for reboots of hash boards. It's unlikely that you'll, very often at least, shut down a hash board. But if you need to, the capability is there. So under preset profiles, what you get here is a drop down starting at 0 or default of the different preset profiles that you can use with LuxOS. We pre-build out 16 underclock profiles and 8 overclock profiles. You'll notice that each profile is effectively 25 megahertz down or up. So from 590 to 565, or from 590 to 615. 25 megahertz either way, and we have a predetermined voltage based on some internal algorithms as to where we'll start on that particular frequency and profile before AutoTuner begins to adjust things. But out of the box, these are there for you to use. We typically recommend that people use things for testing purposes between -6 and +2. That's a pretty good range to see a variety of profiles and efficiency ranges before you get into really low underclocks or really heavy overclocks. But you start at the default profile, and that's where we're at right now, I believe. Check, yep, default profile right now. Down below, you'll get a couple of different visual outputs. These are the health scores of the chips. Higher number means healthier chips. Lower number means unhealthier chips. No number means either the chips are, like I said before, transitioning from one thing to another. Maybe it's one profile or a different voltage. If the chip is unreadable, then it just won't show up here. It'll be grayed out. You see here the little unknown color. You can also adjust this to see frequency or hash rate. On miners that support chip temperature, you'll see another option here for chip temperature. No action to be taken here on this particular screen. This just helps you figure out what a particular board is doing or a particular chip. You also get some indication as to the placement of the chip based on your air exhaust. So if I'm looking at the hash board with it laying down on the table in front of me, I know that the left side is my exhaust side and the right side is my air intake side. And I can tell a technician, hey, I saw a chip bottom corner of the exhaust side was not hashing appropriately or had gone into an unknown state. You get the same thing for the other two hash boards. But like I said, no action to take here, no buttons to click, just this visual, and then you have the profile change options up above. One quick note on profiles, you can create custom profiles. I don't have any created right now, but to create one, you would just give it a name and then a voltage and frequency combo. One note on that though is that AutoTuner does not work on custom profiles because you've explicitly stated what frequency and voltage you want, and there may be a reason that you want that frequency and voltage, so we're not going to adjust it. Now, we know about profiles. We know what profiles are, a combination of frequency and voltage. Now we can use profiles to help us manage things like temperature. And how we do that depends on thresholds and a few configuration settings. To start with, let's talk about the thresholds. Target temperature. This temperature defines at what point, what threshold, or what temperature the miner will kick the fans up to 100% and keep them there. Anything under this temperature, the miner's fans will modulate based on what we think is needed. But at 45 degrees in my configuration, the fans go to 100%. You can verify that here. My fans are at 100%, and my highest temperature is above 45. So a board sensor has gone above 45, and my target temperature is 45, therefore fans kick to 100%. Hot temperature is when the miner will underclock one profile. So if any board sensor hits 65 degrees, the miner is going to underclock one profile and then wait for a minute or so and then reevaluate temperature again. If the miner is still too warm, still at 65 on the hottest sensor, it may underclock again. So this is your threshold for underclocking. And then dangerous temperature, this is when the miner is going to shut down. Again, this is a board temperature. So what we're stating is that if a board sensor gets to 70 degrees, that means that the chips are significantly hotter and likely getting close to 90, 95 degrees. So at 70, we're going to turn off by default. You can increase that to 75, but most of the time 70 works just fine. Now, knowing these three thresholds, when our fans go to 100%, when we underclock, and when we turn off, we can use one of the LuxOS flagship feature called Advanced Thermal Management, or ATM for short, to manage how we operate with these thresholds. Effectively, ATM wants to underclock the miner when it gets too warm, and then bring the miner back up to a predefined limit when the miner cools off. So imagine during the day, when temperatures are warm, your miner's all underclocked just enough in order to maintain temperature. And then at night, when temperatures cool off, the miners come back up to their original hash rate levels. and stay there until the day comes and they get warm again, and we repeat the process. It's almost if you watch your fleet breathe as time goes on. Knowing that, the way ATM functions is you end up with a window. You end up with a minimum profile that you're willing to accept the miner to run at, and a maximum profile that you're willing to run at. The minimum profile states that this is as low as the miner will go to try to maintain temperature while still generating hash rate. We typically recommend you set that to no profile. The max profile is the opposite. The max profile said, what's the highest profile you're willing to go to if the miner is underneath its cool range? And in most cases, default is fine. You could very easily set this to an overclock. You could set this to +2 overclock, and if the miner is cool enough, it will get up into that +2 range. And one thing we want to avoid is the miner getting too warm, cooling off, dropping down one profile, and then 1 minute later when it checks again, oh, the miner's cooled off, let me go back up a profile, and then come back up. That would create this bouncing effect, and you don't want that. We don't want a lot of changes on the miner if we can prevent it. So we give you a buffer. What this buffer says is that if the miner is within 5 degrees of our underclock temperature, do nothing. Don't underclock, don't overclock. So this is our safe buffer. This is when we feel that the miner is happy and safe at its current temperature. Don't do anything if you're within that buffer. So for me, anything between 59 and 64, the miner won't turn off if that's the highest reading on all of my board sensors. Or excuse me, the miner won't underclock if that's the highest reading between all of my board sensors. You can change this to +7, or excuse me, to 7, 8, 3. Depends on your goals. There's some performance characteristics depending on how you change this. But you can definitely change it and experiment within your fleet to see what gets you the best results. But we have the top or the high side, the max profile, the bottom or the low side, the min profile, and the buffer that keeps you from bouncing too much if you're at a place where the miner's warming up and cooling off quickly during profile changes. Startup time, this defines after boot, how soon do you want advanced thermal management to start evaluating temperature again. So after boot, within 1 minute, or right after the 1 minute mark, the miner's going to start, or ATM's going to start evaluating temperature. Same thing for post-ramping time, except this is after we've already done some type of change. It could have been a voltage change, it could have been a profile change, it could have been a frequency change. How soon after a change do you want ATM to come back in and reread the temperatures to make adjustments? Typically 1 minute is where you want it, but if you want less variation or less changes between profiles throughout the day, you could make this post-ramping time bigger, say 5 minutes or 7 minutes, so the miner only gets checked every so often for temperature changes. Typically that works well when uptime is your goal, and your miners are in a safe range from a temperature perspective, but maybe slightly warmer than the 5 degree window, something like that. Down below we have immersion mode. If you turn this on, it'll turn the fans off. Don't turn this on before you put the miner into immersion fluid. Put the miner into immersion fluid before you enable this, because as soon as you enable this, the fans turn off and we ignore them. Temperature is going to go way up if you're not in immersion fluid. Fans, you can set those to manual if you want to. Most of the time, we recommend setting to automatic. But if you do set them to manual, you can come here and define a power or a speed. So right now, my fans are running at 100%, so it's pre-populated at 100. But I could easily set it to manual and come in here and change this to 50 or 80. So yeah, fan speed. Pools, pretty much what you expect here. You put your pool information in. You can have multiple pools. You put in another pool and it'll fail over if it needs to. If this pool were unreachable, it could fail over to a different pool. If you'd like to have a different worker name when it fails over, you could have a different worker name there. You can also split your hash rate depending upon quota or percentage. So if you wanted to split it, say you're in a hosting environment and you want to split some percentage of the hash rate, you could do that here between 2 different pools. You could also have 3, 4, 5 pools if you wanted more failover pools. And there's some characteristics that you can change to define how this will treat failovers. we can talk about that here in just a second. But pools, that's what you got. On the log side, we try to do a good job of providing logs that are both valuable and readable. You'll see here my miner's been up for a little while, so I'm getting status logs, things like temperature, ASIC summaries, so my board summaries, what's my frequencies, what's my hash rates over various periods of time. But you can filter this out for info, warning, or error. You can export your logs. You can see logs from the past, so I can go back previous times and see or download my logs as needed. And I can also increase my logging level, which we'll see here in just a second. One thing with our logs, we do have in our documentation section here, you can see docs.luxor.tech. You can see we have a knowledge base. And in this knowledge base, we try to match up log entries with explanations. So we have a bunch of different event codes, which you can see, and some explanations on those. We also have things like this. When you have an error, you can come here and find problem and solution. And there's a few different ones, right? Under settings, most of these are going to be pulled from Bitmain. So things like your network configuration, that's pulled from Bitmain, as well as your pool configuration and such. That way the miner looks just like it did before after the LuxOS install. Firmware updates are as straightforward as clicking this button and then having a cup of coffee and coming back. 5-10 minutes, the update downloads, installs, miner comes back up and starts hashing, same pool, same IP address. You can turn automatic updates on. That's up to you. Typically on a large fleet, we don't recommend it. On a small fleet, shouldn't be a problem. And then on advanced settings, here's where you can change your logging level. This is one of the few places where if you change it, it requires a restart of the Lux miner to take effect. So up here, you just restart Lux miner in order for that to take effect. This section defines how we treat failover pools, things of that nature. Most of the time, these at default are acceptable. If they're not, you can come in here and change these values to meet whatever criteria you have. Auto updates, again, if you have a large fleet, we typically don't really need to mess with this too much. One thing about this though is that if you come back up to firmware updates, whenever you click this button, whatever you have listed here is what's going to be downloaded. We have 3 different sources of installs. We have testing for really new features, things that we haven't rolled out to production yet. We have preview, which is kind of the things that we plan on releasing out to our production release, but we're still testing them. We may ask you to update to a preview release for a special feature or for a bug fix if you're working with us. If you need to do that, you'll just come here and select testing, update, and then go back here and click your update button. Otherwise, the rest of this stuff under auto updates, you can typically leave alone. Temperature control, we only require 1 temperature sensor per board to be functioning in order for the miner to run. And then these 2 kind of define how we determine if a sensor is bad. Fan control, power off speed. So this one matters if the miner goes into curtailment or for whatever reason stops hashing. What percentage do you want your fans to run at? A lot of places might have problems with back pressure, where if a machine goes offline, the fans don't operate at 100% anymore. They're operating at 20%. So hot airs might be allowed or be forced back through that miner, and then that enters the cold aisle inside of the container or inside of the mining room, which increases the temperature of miners next to it. So if you want a higher fan speed when the miner is not hashing, you can change this to 40%, 60%, whatever percent makes sense to you, up to 100. And then 2 big ones are no-pick hashboard protection and overtemp auto recovery. No-pick hashboard protection, when enabled, means that if the machine doesn't have a pick, if one board fails, all 3 boards will shut down. This is a safety feature. If you have a machine with a board that fails out and you want to run it temporarily with just 2 boards, you come set this to false and hit update, and that machine will be able to run on less than 3 hash boards. Then overtemp auto recovery. This is what happens when a board overheats. Well, we will let that board go down and then come back up. If it's still too warm, take it down again, wait a few minutes, bring it back up. If it's still too warm, take it down again, double the wait time, bring it back up. It'll do this 5 times. Each time evaluating temperature. If temperature's too high on that board, shut it down again. When that occurs, after the 5th time, the miner or the board will stay down and require user intervention in order for you to come back and start hashing again. Turn this off for immersion machines, because immersion machines have a shared environment, a shared fluid, and you don't want a machine that's already overheating, continuously rebooting and warming the rest of that fluid up. Air-cooled machines, you pretty much leave it at true. And then last but not least, the uninstall button. Now, I hope that everyone installs LuxOS. I hope you don't need to uninstall LuxOS. But in the event that you do, for troubleshooting, for testing, you can just hit the uninstall button here. And when you hit uninstall, the machine will revert back to Bitmain with its previous configuration, same pools, same IP addresses, and come back up and start hashing again. It takes about 5 minutes or so, and your machine will be back online running Bitmain. But that's LuxOS in a nutshell. There's lots of little corner cases that we can get into and tuning that we can do to try to make your experience the best it can be. But for the average person just installing LuxOS for the first time, this is kind of where you're going to start. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to support, and me or one of my colleagues will be happy to help you out. Thank you.